Hello again, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Wrestling Connection podcast. We are here. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. It really means the world to us. The fact that every single Sunday, when you see a new episode drop in your preferred podcasting outlet, that you choose to download and stream our new episode, our new chat, talking about whatever it is in wrestling that connects us this week. And this week, we've got a fun one. But, ladies and gents, it is we're going through a tough time. We are going through hard times, ladies and gents, as Dusty Rhodes would say, and as it says in Cody Rhodes' current theme song. We are here, ladies and gents. I, Chris, your one co-host here that always introduces the show. That's me. I'm feeling fine and dandy. I'm feeling 100% and ready to go. However, my partner in crime, my co-host Glenn with a D, if you ask Pat Patterson, Glenn, he actually sounds with a bit of a cold. He kind of sounds like Glenn, but he's got a bit of a cold. He's a wee bit under the weather, but he's still here to provide for all of you listeners here on TWC. Glenn, how are you feeling in the grand scheme of things?
So emotionally and spiritually, I am very good, Chris. I am loaded with the cold. But what I will say is that I'm confident that you will have the good nature and the good, you will be good enough to edit out any sniffing, coughing, or sneezing. But I would just stress to our listeners who are worried about us that I have zero symptoms of COVID, so I'm doing fine, thank you very much. But yes, I'm in a very good mood. I'm pumped for all the wrestling that we have going on right now at this time of year. It's insane. Like, we're so lucky as wrestling fans, and we have so much to talk about. And you know, we don't talk about current stuff that much, but currently we have so much to enjoy. I feel very privileged to be a wrestling fan right now. Do you know what I mean?
It is a good time, and I think this is a sort of down period after SummerSlam. I think it does kind of dip a little bit. But just in general, I think we are very lucky to have the amount of content that we have, and the fact that wrestling has been the one thing that has stayed in business throughout COVID makes us extremely lucky that we've never had to go, oh well, the wrestling's back. We've always kind of had it there, so I feel very, very lucky. Have you been able to watch anything this week, or are you just feeling a bit down in the dumps because of everything that's going on, or have you been able to catch anything?
I don't know about you. I think you and I are the same in this way. But for me, when I do feel low, whether it's just I'm stressed or I'm upset about something, or when I'm got a cold or whatever, wrestling is a really good comfort for me. So I have watched a bit of wrestling this week, and I've been, apart from the WWE highlights, I've been kind of going AEW daft. I'm really enjoying all things All Elite Wrestling right now. Everything from their COVID presentation. I still think they, as impressive as the Thunderdome is, I still think that All Elite's presentation in COVID has been the best out of all the mainstream promotions, hands down. And I love the fact that they're able to get fans in because they've got this big outdoor arena. So everything is, in terms of my wrestling consumption right now, it's mainly been AEW, and that's not a bad thing. It's nice to kind of catch up, because I kind of left AEW to one side after Double or Nothing, and I kind of became a bit more casual again. And now I feel like I've met up with an old friend, and we're sitting having a drink together, and I'm
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
I'm very guilty sometimes of maybe not considering other wrestling promotions as important as WWE. Like, for example, I don't watch Ring of Honor ever, but every so often I might catch a pay-per-view here and there. I go in and out of New Japan, that sort of thing. ICW is the same. But even older stuff, I have all these TNA DVDs and all these ROH DVDs and PWG DVDs, and always I don't really consider them these great parts of my collection because they're not WWE or they're not AEW or whatever, or they're not mainstream. They're not this historic stuff. But it's part of wrestling history. It's still wrestling. Just because it's not WWE doesn't mean we can't enjoy it. So I've got this Best of AJ Styles 3-disc DVD set that TNA put out, right? And I've never watched it because I've never felt the need to go, I want to watch some old TNA. But it's still just as important as old DCW stuff or old WCW stuff. It's still part of wrestling history that you can look back on and talk about and stuff and reminisce about the glory days of another promotion. I don't know how you feel about that, but
put it this way, right? When I think about what we have in front of us, what our options are as wrestling fans right now, and I compare it to 20 years ago when I was 9 years old, going on 10, and it was around, I think it was when I was about 10 or 11, we had ITV Digital. So I didn't have Sky Sports, so I couldn't watch Raw, but I could watch SmackDown on a Saturday. and that always came with some raw highlights, and I could watch like Metal and Superstars, and so I was always aware of what was happening like on the product. So my wrestling consumption was always based on what came on Sky One, and then after ITV Digital collapsed in 2001 or 2002, it was 2002 because it was around about the time of WrestleMania 18. Then my wrestling consumption was my video VHS collection, and then a couple of years later, I could watch some scratchy videos on like streaming websites, stupidvideos.com, and eventually YouTube, and whatever Robert had in his collection. So it was very limited, and you cherish whatever you've got. Now, as I speak, if I want to go back to the glory days of ECW or TNA, or if I want to watch the highlights of last night's Raw or SmackDown, like I can do it like that. And I know this is an obvious point, but sometimes when I'm on Twitter and people are complaining and moaning about the Roman Reigns heel turn isn't being done properly, even though we've been begging for a Roman Reigns heel turn for years, or Keith Lee's NXT title reign was pointless, or the Fatal 4-Way Iron Man match was a shambles, or when I like these might be valid criticisms. I'm not saying that you can't be a wrestling critic, but sometimes I think people get so visceral with their criticism that we maybe need to just take a step back and have a bit of gratitude. And like, we're a positive podcast. That's how we market ourselves, right? We look at things positively. Yep. And that's how I approach my life. I've been in a place in my life where I've got wound up about insignificant things. But now when I meet a stressful situation in my life, I take stock and I think of the bigger picture, and I'll think of all the things to be thankful for. And that's why we have that segment on the show, right? I look at wrestling the same way. If something bothers me at wrestling, or if I'm facing a dilemma in wrestling, I might have stopped making sense at this point, mate. I think you're
no.
I realize that actually how good it is to be a wrestling fan now, because compared to what limitations we had up even in the mid noughties, not just like the 90s when I became a fan, but like in the noughties compared to now, wrestling is really good. So do you know what? If you're sitting watching SmackDown and you don't like the way that Roman Reigns is acting as a heel, or the fact that he's wrestling in a t-shirt, just go back to the time that you liked, because you can do it in 2 seconds on your phone. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've been thinking about tape. I've been thinking about tape trading. Tape trading.
Isn't that a wrestler in the indie scene? Weighing 402 pounds from Raleigh, North Carolina, Trape Tating. Right, he's our new fictional wrestler. He's going to be a permanent fixture on the show. Trape Tating.
TT. Right, aye, so tape trading. No, I've been thinking about tape trading a lot, right? Back in the day when you had to do that, that was the only way you could watch other wrestling. And that whole idea kind of blows my mind. That you're sharing tapes with strangers and you're recording your own version of it on this horrendous quality tape, like that's how you're getting your information of Japan or ECW or something, It's crazy. I'm just so detached from that time now, where like YouTube is so second nature. Like every time I'm watching wrestling, I'm checking Twitter and Instagram and stuff, but you're so right in terms of wrestling being a comfort thing. That is my absolute number one like thing to go to when I'm feeling down, when I'm feeling sad, when I'm feeling tired, whatever. It reminds me of my home. It reminds me of family. It reminds me of a happy time. It just reminds me of being content. And actually, I was a guest on a YouTube channel recently. A good friend of the show, Luke, who runs the YouTube channel Razor Wire Reviews, got me on the channel for a first edition of a new series, which is called Can Films Save Your Life? And he or Can Films Save My Life? I think it's called. And he asked me 15 questions about my movie watching life. Like what would be this sort of movie for me, or what memories do I have about this sort of time in my life and that sort of thing in terms of watching films. And there was so many of the answers that I couldn't really gather, because I was like, wrestling's my answer to this question, I don't have a comfort film. I put on wrestling when I need comfort, So it's a funny world that we are in, ladies and gents, talking about the world of pro wrestling.
It really is. And you mentioned tape trading. That was still a thing when my wrestling fandom was happening, although it wasn't always necessarily tapes that were traded. Case in point, we all agree that WrestleMania 17 was the best WrestleMania. That happened when I was in primary 7, right? And I didn't have Sky Sports, as I've just established. But I knew that Craig Littlejohn was taping it, okay? And he was only this is true.
Shout out to Craig.
I know. I haven't spoken to him since primary seven, but he would only lend me the tape of WrestleMania 17 so I could watch it on April 2nd, 2001. He would
Right.
only lend me the tape if I gave him permanently a Charizard card. And if you
Right.
don't know your Pokemon trading card game, and you didn't know Pokemon when it was hot as hell in the late 90s and early noughties, Charizard was the most prestigious card. And every time I catch one in Pokemon Go, I kind of think back to this moment. But I permanently gave up my Charizard so I could watch WrestleMania 17 the day after it happened. And to Craig Littlejohn's credit, he was good for it. He gave me the tape. He let me borrow it for as long as I needed. But not too long because I think I had to go to somebody else afterwards. This was the thing. The guy was running like a business in the
Right. Yeah.
playground. You know?
He was collecting all these Pokemon cards.
I know. You know, he's quite sly. I don't know what he's up to now, but I'd like to think he's a millionaire because he certainly had the brain for it, you know?
Or a drug dealer.
Oh, God. Since I used his real name, we should say for legal reasons, we don't believe that he is any of those negative things.
Don't be daft, of course not. No.
Citizen. So, I got to watch WrestleMania 17 the day after, and he didn't spoil anything for me. He told me it was good. He told me Austin and The Rock was good. But he didn't say anything about the shocking ending or anything like that. So, tape trading was one thing, and it's just so mad to think that a primary 7 kids now, if they want to watch WrestleMania the day afterwards, they could do it like that.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's crazy. The understatement of the century. Yeah, it was okay. Rock and Austin was all right. Aye. Well, listen, we're here to move on. Even though Glenn's not feeling the greatest physically, he's still got his heart set on the Wrestling Connection podcast. And one of my favourite things to do here is listen to Glenn tell stories, because he has all these stories. He has a few years on me, so he has more stories than I do. So, so I would like to ask my good close personal friend Glenn if you could tell us a wee story about another time that you may have met a wrestling personality. Is there something that comes to mind when I ask this?
My answer is... Can you cue the jingle, please, Chris?
I will do. Here we go.
Meet a wrestler, we've met a wrestler in the flesh.
Oh, yeah.
So, as you may have guessed from like the half a bar of music, this is a kind of a story that I have mentioned in passing a few times, but I've never told the proper story. And I think for me, this is going to be, and I'm going to try not to ramble too much. So, Chris, you keep me in check because I don't want to make this boring.
Listen, if anybody knows about rambling and being boring when they're telling meet a wrestler stories, it's me. So you just do your thing.
You say that, but last week's episode when you told Lionheart the Lionheart story, that was awesome. And you accused yourself of rambling when you talked about the Young Bucks as well. And again, I thought that was awesome. But so I'm going to talk about meeting Bayley. And for me, like, sometimes I tell these stories about meeting wrestlers, and I end up realizing that they had a much deeper meaning than I initially thought. I'm thinking of like when I told you the John Cena story, like that did a lot for me, and I actually think this was along those lines. I think so.
All right, I'm interested then.
I'm not going to try and get too deep or like too personal or anything, but it's hard not to, I guess, when telling the story. So I need to put it into context because it wasn't just a case of opportunistically bumping into a wrestler that I like. There's a wider context, and I think that's what makes this for me an interesting story. And whether or not the listeners think so, that's up to them to decide. They can always skip past this part if they don't like it. So I'll I'll preface this with the fact that nowadays, like in the year 2020, I live a happy life. I've never been happier, and I'm married. My wife and I have just bought a house, and everything's good. But going back 4 or 5 years ago, not so much. It was a difficult time for me, and so I had been in a long-term relationship, and that ended. And then at the age of like 24, I was back at home with the tail between my legs, living with my parents. Having left when I was like 19. Well, living with my dad, I should stress. But one of the positives that came out of that, and this is kind of a typical thing that can come out of breakups, is that you spend a bit more time for yourself and you just do things that are good for you, I think a lot of people go through that when relationships break down. You take some time to take stock and think about what you want and what's important to you before you consider dating again or anything. And so that kind of happened to me, and so I had to move back home, and that came with a lot of feelings of guilt and kind of shame, because I as hospitable and lovely as my dad is, you still can't help but think I'm putting a burden on him. He's got his own lifestyle now. So I moved back in, put my telly in my old bedroom that I last slept in as a teenager, and I renewed my subscription for the network, and I started watching NXT. And in 2015 for NXT, that was like really, that was when it was like blossoming, and that's when I started to notice Bayley and the stuff with Sasha Banks, right? That was 2015, wasn't it, Chris? I'm getting my years mixed up.
Yeah, that's when they had the stuff at Brooklyn and then the Iron Man match and that sort of thing. Yeah.
So at this point, because and prior to that, I think my love of wrestling had kind of been a wee bit belittled in the lifestyle that I'd had before. So I was really indulging, and NXT kind of seemed like this cool underground thing, even though it was a WWE product, right? So
no, but man, see, in 2015, 2016, I kind of mentioned this a couple weeks ago. Like that was the brand for our age range, for what we want, our kind of vibe about wrestling. NXT was perfect during that time. I totally agree with that.
Absolutely. So I started watching NXT, and I loved everything about it. I loved all the people who were on the roster at that time. Balor and Samoa Joe, Apollo Crews. But it was so, like, even though the women's division was kind of making strides in the main roster at that time, the women's division in NXT was just on another level. And I was indulging in this, and as I was indulging in watching the NXT product, I was starting to feel more at one with myself again. I was like, yeah, I'm doing stuff for me. I feel like I'm Glenn again. I don't feel like I'm being a fraction of somebody else. I'm being me, and by watching this product and buying T-shirts for wrestlers that I like, this is me being me. And then I really started to enjoy at that point, as part of all of this, the Bayley character, pardon me, because I was intrigued enough initially by the presentation of that character in NXT, because here's this character that, you would see the kids, the little girls in the audience with the hugger T-shirts, and like Izzy being the famous fan. From NXT. And it's so weird that she's like a proper teenager now,
and she's like training to be a wrestler. Like, she's going to win the NXT women's title one day, and it's going to be like, the footage they're going to have of her as a wee girl is amazing.
That match has to happen at WrestleMania, Izzy versus Bayley. And Bayley's not even 30, so Bayley and Izzy can happen one day, right? That's got to happen. And like, it's going to be heel Bayley versus Izzy, or it could be the other way around. But anyway, I digress. But so I was so intrigued by the presentation of Bayley, because you have all these like little girls and stuff who love her, right? But you also would see fully grown men wearing hugger T-shirts. And I realized that it was just like, and you can say this about a lot of the women on the NXT roster, but in 2015, it was still refreshing to see a character who wasn't sexualized at all, who had a very clear character, a developed character, and and that's, we talk about loving wrestling when we're sad as escapism. I loved Bayley because she was just so wholesome, and she was wholesome at a time in my life when I didn't feel wholesome and I was really sad. And so I just saw so much comfort in watching Bayley. She was like a big hug, pardon the pun, but it was like being hugged watching her matches and watching that wholesome character. So I bought my own I'm a Hugger T-shirt, and the funny thing is, I used to wear that to where I was work. This was before I was a teacher, so I used to wear that to where I worked at the time, but with a hoodie on.
You should wear it to work now. You should wear it to work now. That'd be great.
The problem is, though, right? I used to wear it like with a hoodie, which was open, so people could only see I'm a, and it would look like Ugger. So they wouldn't know what the word was, and they would think it would say bugger or other nasty words. But yeah, so I properly embraced the Bayley character, and then of course you get to the quality of the matches with Sasha and stuff. So it was awesome. And I need to check on my phone from when we were doing the live shows episode, because I can't determine where at what point I saw Bayley wrestle first. It was either the WWE live show where she teamed up with somebody and Sasha teamed up with somebody at the Hydro, or it was the NXT show at the Hydro. it was one or the other that I saw her
Right.
first at. Those were both the same year. I think the WWE live show came first because it was just after Brooklyn, I think.
Right, I
Or
see.
or,
The,
or,
the
or it was just
NXT one
after
was
that.
in December.
Yeah. So I think there was a WWE live show in November, not long after the Iron
Right.
Man match. And that was a big deal for me, that I was excited to see Bayley and Sasha. And I think like one team with Natalia and one team with somebody else. I can't remember. And then we saw them at we saw her at the NXT show, of course, in December. So like lots of things started to get better in my life at that point. But one of the things I enjoyed was indulging in something that was for me and seeking comfort in this wholesome character. And it was just refreshing to have this wholesome, positive character, a woman in wrestling who isn't sexualized at all and is just there to be a wholesome character, but also an awesome wrestler.
Yeah.
So you then fast forward to 2016 when Raw and SmackDown are doing tapings in Glasgow. And of course, we've spoken about this weekend, haven't we?
We have.
Well, not weekend, but these days in Glasgow. And at that point, I was working in a place where I had like flexible hours. So I just had to do a certain amount of hours a week. So I banked up my hours so that I could take the Monday and the Tuesday off.
Yeah.
And my plan was simply, because I had no knowledge of where the wrestlers were staying at this point. So I planned just to wander around Glasgow until I could figure out what hotel they were staying in. And I knew that they would have to get to the venue for about 2, because you always hear that from like wrestling documentaries. You get to the building about 2 on a TV day, right? So I thought, I'll get to town in the morning and wander around the big hotels and try and infer if there's a bus where it is, right?
That's great.
So
slightly psychotic, but great.
It is, yeah. And I just wanted to try and like get some high fives, maybe some selfies or something with some wrestlers. I actually didn't go into it with the big design of meeting Bayley, although I was wearing my hugger t-shirt.
Nice.
Which I would go on to wear that night at that famous episode of Raw where we all started chanting, "Hey Bayley, I want to know if you'll be my girl." So I get off at Glasgow Central on the day of the Raw taping, and I get my phone up and I put in like hotels nearby. And the first one that comes up is Radisson Blu, because that's the nearest hotel to Glasgow. Well, it's one of the closest hotels to. It's not the Grand Central, but it's one of the closest hotels to Glasgow Central. So I kind of figured that they probably wouldn't stay at the Radisson Blu, because I knew that John Cena and the Bellas had stayed there the year before, because the Bellas took a picture outside it. But I got the impression that was just like a VIP hotel.
Okay.
So I followed Google Maps to the Radisson Blu, because I couldn't remember exactly where it was. And I go there and I'm looking for like a queue of wrestling fans, and I couldn't see them. And I didn't at this point know that there was multiple entrances and there was an exit where the wrestlers would be coming out. So I'm standing outside the front doors of the Radisson, not the back entrances where the wrestlers come out and get on the bus. So I haven't noticed the buses. I haven't noticed the wrestling fans. I have no idea that this is the hotel. I'm at the front door. I'm at the front door of the Radisson Blu, all on my own, like just like with my hugger t-shirt on. I'm looking at my phone and I'm thinking, is this maybe it? And I look through the glass doors into the lobby, and standing at reception with a phone in one hand and a coffee in the other is Rusev.
Yes.
So I'm like, oh my God, it's Rusev. And I'm about to go in, and then I realize there's like a security guy at the main door of Radisson Blu.
Right.
So I thought, right, he's not going to let me in, okay? Because there's clearly people stopping guys coming in, because they know that this is the time that the wrestlers are coming down to the bus. So I walk around the building, and at that point, the funny thing is, at that point, Rusev clocks me, and he starts walking towards the side exit. So I'm walking around the building, and Rusev's doing the same journey, but we're through a pane of glass. So we're kind of walking together towards the bus.
Right.
So then Rusev goes out of sight. It wasn't Rusev Day. And then I turn the corner, and that's when I see the bus, and there's a small number of wrestling fans gathered. So I go up to them, and I kind of stand near them, and I can get near the front because there's only about 7 or 8 of them, and more would eventually show up. And the wrestlers start filing out. And so I think like Sasha Banks came out, and like she's known for not really like she's quite private around fans. She only really engages with them if it's a signing and stuff, which is like her right, you know.
Absolutely.
So she just gets out of the hotel and she goes straight to the bus. And then Goldust comes out, and he's awesome. He gave me this big flipping kind of big manly kind of handshake, which he replicated the second time I met him with Inside the Ropes, and he shook my hand. And Cesaro came out and he did the same thing. And then Goldust was hanging about the bus for ages, and Sasha came back out to chat to him and take pictures of him, like at the entrance to the bus, which was weird. Charlotte came out, I said hi to her, and then out comes Bayley, and like I'm so pumped, like I'm so excited, and like let me be clear, folks. If there was like little girls or little kids, little Bayley fans there, I would have, of course, like given them priority. But it was a bunch of fellow sweaty loner wrestling men, right? So I didn't feel that bad about kind of like saying like this is the person I want to meet. So I kind of lean near the front and I kind of separate my jacket a little bit so it's clear that I'm wearing the Hugger t-shirt.
Right.
So Bayley comes out and she's like, hey guys, I'll be back in just a second. So she runs up to the bus, dumps her bag, and she comes back and she starts signing stuff. And I have nothing to get signed. I just want a picture. And so she comes up to me and she's like, hey, I said, hi, how's it going, Bayley? Can I get a picture, please? And she goes, yeah, that's fine. So we take a couple of pictures, and she goes, that is a really cool t-shirt. I was like, great, thank you so much. And that was it. And like, that was my interaction with Bayley. It wasn't embarrassing. It was lovely. And I took a picture. But then the funny part is that after that happened, then the wrestlers started flooding out. And you'd think that would be, as a wrestling fan, my cue to stay. But I was on such a high for finally meeting Bayley and for getting a picture with her. So I'm looking at my phone and Bayley's now left. She's gone on the bus and I'm standing right at the front. So I have a great position to meet other stars. And the fans are trying to edge and get to where I am. And I could stay there if I wanted to meet all these stars. And at that moment, right, Bayley's got on the bus. And at the same time, out walks Braun Strowman and Chris Jericho.
Oh my word.
And I'm just looking at my phone and I just like, I'm happy. And as they're approaching me, so Braun and Jericho are coming up and you know, acknowledging fans. And as they're coming close, I just turn around and walk away. And to this day, I'm not sure if that was the right thing to do. But you know what? It meant other people got to hang out and meet Braun and Jericho, right? So I'm pretty sure I could. And as I'm walking away, like, I'm pretty sure I heard people go, Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens was the Universal Champion at the time.
Yeah. What about Roman?
I did not see Roman. Like, obviously he was there that night. I think I missed him.
Right.
He must have come out afterwards. But yeah, maybe did I see Roman? I don't remember. He might have done it, but I think Roman, if I did see Roman, he would have been one of the ones that just went straight to the bus, because there was a few that just kind of got straight on, which is
right.
Fine. But whilst I could hear all these people screaming for Braun and Jericho, I just like go straight to McDonald's at Glasgow, you know, the one at Glasgow Central, like near there. And I sat there, I bought like a burger, and I just looked at this photo and I posted on social media, and I was just so happy. And like, to bring this back to the kind of emotional, kind of sentimental thing, that was the kind one of the moments where I kind of thought, do you know what? I made the right decision by getting out of that relationship. And even though like over a year had passed by that point, but I was still living with my dad. Excuse me. And so at that point, I just kind of looked at the picture and I thought, this could just be like a Sado posing with a wrestler that he's got this kind of like fan kind of crush, not like obsession with, right?
Yeah.
Or it's symbolic of me embracing me and realizing that if I'm going to move forward and find a new relationship, that it needs to be this mutual cycle of accepting who we are and not trying to suppress aspects of someone's personality, because I think that's where relationships get bad, if one party tries to suppress an aspect of someone else's personality.
Yeah, you're a team.
Like hobby and interest. Yeah, this is it. You don't want to become like diluted versions of each other. You want to become person A and person B who just are even better for being together. And like 6 months later, I met my wife, who bears a passing resemblance to Bayley when she is wearing her fitness gear and does her ponytail to the side, but that has nothing to do with it. Okay. So yes, on paper, it's just, I wait outside a hotel, I ask for a selfie, I get a selfie, we speak for 3 seconds, and she's gone. But being the kind of sentimental person I am, for me, it was symbolic of embracing like a new chapter in my life, which led me to the happy place that I'm in now. And I think the Bayley character has always meant that to me. Every time, even now, when I see her doing all this cool stuff as a heel, I always smile when I watch her wrestle, because I just think you as a performer and this character that you put out there, it did a lot for me. And I have no embarrassment about saying that. That's what wrestling does. And it speaks to what we spoke about at the beginning. Sometimes wrestling's what you need when things are tough. And that's what Bayley did for me. And that's why that selfie is one of my absolute favorites. And I'm always going to cherish it. And I hope one day to like get an autograph off her or something. I'd love to meet her again.
Yeah. Well, I've just done some stalking of my own here.
Okay.
And I've just found this picture of you and Bayley on your Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And the caption is, I just met Bayley. I'm about to effing explode. She complimented my shirt. Ah!
That sounds about right.
That's amazing, man. That's such a funny story. That's so nice. Question though, when Jericho and Strowman came out, were they chatting as pals, or was it like individual? Like did they come out like on their own?
It was one after the other, but very quickly. And the reason I know this is because I almost missed Jericho, because Braun was so big. And he was wearing shades, and he was like this big kind of guy that people were going, Braun, Braun, Braun. And everyone on the other side of the barricade was going, Jericho, 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 because we couldn't see Jericho.
Chris,
and then it became apparent that they were both there. So yeah.
People like, Braun, 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 Braun.
That's what it's like.
Hey guys, let's get these hands. I'm big country. He would have been mental to me, like in terms of like size wise. You know what I mean? He would have been huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great though. That's great. I love the fact that you walked away, because it's almost as if that one moment with Bayley kind of meant so much to you. You were there for like an experience, not to take a selfie with all these wrestlers just because you were there. That makes it a bit more special. I think that's great.
That was it for me. I just felt like I've had my joy. I've got my memory now for today. And there's other wrestling fans here who maybe have what I have, like my fandom for Bayley, like my passion for her as a character. The guys around me might have that for Braun Strowman or Kevin Owens or Roman Reigns or Charlotte or Sasha. So if I stand here, I might be getting in the way of somebody else having something. And I just kind of wanted to share the love and the positivity. And being a wrestling fan, if the world goes right again, maybe I'll have a chance to meet Braun again,
exactly.
or whatever. So, I didn't feel bad about that. It just felt like the right thing,
That is because you're also a nice human, and you knew that like kids or whoever, when we were kids, but other people that were there would benefit more from that. You know what I mean? It's probably just part of your personality, which I think is a credit to you, and it's a credit to the whole experience, because you knew how much it would mean to you personally. So that's a great story. I love the fact that it wasn't your typical autograph signing.
Yeah,
because obviously that's the main theme of this segment, isn't it? You go and you meet someone at a signing or at a meeting or whatever. So it's nice to have those little different stories, like the Lionheart one last week, and then this one. Where it's like a self-inflicted meat,
Absolutely. And I do have to say, I do think I need to thank Rusev, because if I hadn't clocked him in the reception, I probably would have walked away from the Radisson Blu, and it would have been too late.
I love Rusev so much, man.
Yeah, so Rusev had a big part to play in that story for sure.
Cool. That was great. I'll clip that bit and put it on the socials, which is at WrestleConnection on Instagram and at WrestleConnect1 on Twitter, and it might even pop up on our YouTube channel, which is just by searching the Wrestling Connection podcast on YouTube and hitting the subscribe button. We put lots of exclusives on there and individual excerpts from the episodes and all that good stuff on our YouTube channel. So, would you like to do something else, or you want to go for a toilet break now, or a blow your nose break?
Both, please. Okay, jingle.
Toilet break.
Ooh, yeah. All right, we're back, ladies and gents. And whilst Glenn was at the toilet, I was just looking through Twitter there, and the WWE Network were posting a teaser for the upcoming Broken Skull Sessions episode with Jerry the King Lawler, which is going to be coming on the WWE Network this month. And it is basically, Jerry Lawler's like synonymous with being like a really good artist. Like he always draws like and paints incredible portraits and that sort of thing, right? There's a video on this Twitter preview, and Jerry Lawler draws a picture of Batman in less than a minute, right? Nice. So I was watching it, and I was like, no way. And he just does it, like, with no even, like, he's not looking at a picture of Batman and trying to draw it or trace it or anything. Just from his own mind, he draws Batman. And then Austin tweets, later Jerry added some more to the drawing and signed it for me, getting it framed right now. It's 1 of 1. Thanks, King. So I was thinking that's really cool, like the fact that Austin's now King drew Stone Cold a picture and Austin got it framed. So that got me thinking, I wonder if there's any like real obscure talents that other wrestlers may have. Of course you get your singing, and of course you've got dancing and other people that other things that people can do. But what about you? Have you got any like funny, random, obscure talents that you can share with the listeners?
Obscure talents, right? Well, I am a pianist, but that's not really an obscure talent. My wife is a music teacher, so one always feels a little bit in the shadow, so to speak. But I don't know, like I'm really good at doing, that thing that Shane McMahon used to do with the kendo stick, where he'd like twist it between his fingers, right?
Yeah.
Because of Shane McMahon, I'm really good at that. So I used I used to live. This is awful, right? I'm sorry in advance for the implications of this, but I used to live near a ski slope. I used to nick ski poles from it because they were like kendo sticks and lightsabers. So they were served two purposes. So I could pretend they were lightsabers, these ski poles. But I could also do the Shane McMahon thing, or do like the prequel trilogy-esque lightsaber flippy things that Obi-Wan and Anakin would do, and Darth Maul. I like to do that quite a lot. I can do a good Kermit the Frog impression.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, Kermit the Frog here.
That's excellent. Can you say like a famous wrestling catchphrase or something in the voice?
Nah, but I can do this. It's the Wrestling Connection podcast with Glenn and Chris. Yay! We should totally open up with that one day.
Totally should clip that. Yeah, okay. Noted.
What else could we say in Kermit's voice? Don't be a bonehead. Don't be a clown. Please, don't try this at home.
Please leave the danger to us. Oh, God. Kermit. Did you know it was like the 44th anniversary of the Muppet Show or something the other day?
Jeez, that's long lasting. I mean, I'm glad the Muppets made their way to Monday Night Raw. Thank goodness.
Remember that? That was actually not too bad. I remember the idea of that. I was like, ugh, but it was actually all right.
I liked it. I like Kermit totally trolling the Miz and going, "Hey, I thought you were I'm sorry, I've lost it now because I've got a cold. I thought you were a good guy now.
I thought you were awesome." Anyway, shout out to Kermit, and hopefully he can do a cameo for us here to open the podcast. Here. And I've got a feeling it'd be free.
Yeah. Speaking of cameos, by the way,
I know.
Did you hear this about Vince McMahon?
What a nonsense!
Here, Vince. That's the only reason that people listen to us. You need to go easy on them. I mean, I'm fine if we just. Do you know what I want? And this might sound outdated by the time this goes out. I want Tony Khan to put out a statement saying, "I am more than happy for our contracted wrestlers to make themselves a bit of extra money." It's just so mad because, like, who's done cameos for us? Like the Coach, like he's there as Jonathan Coachman. That's his name. Chavo Guerrero. That way, he's not contracted to WWE, but like Mick Foley, who else has done it for us? Santino,
yeah.
Like, so I think Mick Foley was the only guy who's been under contract, but like all the WWE guys who are on there and do it like under their real names, or they do like Joe and Anoy, or however you pronounce his name, aka Roman Reigns. It's like, this is a positive podcast, so we'll move away from this. But Vince McMahon, let your stars stream video games on Twitch. Record cameos, for God's sake.
The cameo thing's all right, I think, because it's like because you're using your real name, and surely you don't own the person's real name, right?
No, exactly.
But like things like the YouTube channel and the Twitches, which is literally nowadays a second career for them. Yeah. Look at like Xavier Woods with Up Up Down Down. I will put my foot. I'll put my foot down. I'll make a point saying this right now. There is absolutely no way Woods gives that YouTube channel up. There's no way.
No, because he could, because of what you can earn on YouTube now, Woods could leave the WWE. I'm not saying he ever would, because I think he's well liked and well respected.
Agreed.
Yeah, loved by the
he fits in well, I think. Yeah.
But in theory, see what I did there? I was thinking of Austin Theory, not Austin Creed. Wait, what's his name?
Austin Watson is his real name, but in Up or Down, then he's Austin Creed.
Austin Creed, but I was thinking of Austin Theory. So in theory, right?
In Creed,
he could, if he wanted to, like if his contract came up, he could leave WWE. I'm sure he would get wrestling work where he wanted. He could make money either on the Indies, or I'm sure there could be something for him in Impact or AEW. And because the guy's an asset, he can do so much. And the one limitation of the Xavier Woods New Day character is that we've not seen the best of him, like his versatility. I don't think yet. Like he could be an amazing heel. I'm sure. I'm not saying that should happen because I love all the New Day stuff, but he could make YouTube his primary income. Especially now that he's probably made his money. He's been under contract as a big star in WWE for that long. I can't imagine the implications of this as well. If this had happened a few months ago, before all the releases, Matt Cardona and Brian Myers probably would have been allowed to do their podcast, and I love their YouTube channel. Like mainly Brian Myers. I'm not a huge Matt Cardona fan, if I'm honest. Let your bloody wrestlers send smartphone flipping filmed videos to fans, for God's sake. It's all very wholesome stuff. Jonathan Coachman is raising money for our donation heart transplant charity. He's not getting any money from that. Mick Foley gives most, if not all, of his money to charity from Cameo, and a lot of these other WWE stars are compensating for the money that they're not making from merchandise sales and live events. So you can't have it both ways, Vince. You can't say that your wrestlers are independent contractors but also have this tyrannical ruling. We're a positive podcast. Let's leave this to one side.
Well, Xavier Woods is a random wrestler that we love, but it is now time for a brand new segment. Here we go.
Love it. Right, this needs to actually be queued in as our actual jingle.
Don't worry, the episode that goes out tomorrow has already got it queued in, don't worry.
Yes.
By the way, when I was on Spotify there, I forgot I've not done this in ages. Let's go to the wrestling theme song playlist and let's hit shuffle. What random song is going to come on, Glenn? You have to guess.
I am going to go for the corporate ministry theme.
Oh, good one. I'm going to say All Grown Up, the Stephanie McMahon song. Ready?
All grown up. Yeah, let's do
Here
it.
we go. Oh.
You big troll.
I know.
I didn't see that coming.
Oh, I love this one.
Good old Raven.
What about me?
What about Raven? I kept forgetting that's what it was called,
Right, here we go. It's time for Random Wrestler Recollection, everybody. And because we're a little bit early in terms of, we're running on good time this week, we're going to do 3 suggestions. So for those who don't know, I reach into this random box of random wrestlers and pull out a random wrestler. And Glenn and I have no idea who we're about to talk about. But whoever the wrestler is, we have to give our top of our head, anything we have knowledge-wise about this wrestler, story-wise, funny moments as fans about these wrestlers. So the first one that came out the tub is, of course, oh wow, my God, what are the fucking odds in this? Eddie Guerrero. And I was just singing his theme song before we started recording. Eddie Guerrero, go for it.
Right, so like a lot of, I think, fans of my generation who were born and bred on the WWF, I didn't become aware of Eddie Guerrero until the end of '99 when he came into the World Wrestling Federation. And it's one of my regrets as a fan. It's one of my regrets as a fan that I think, unlike you, Chris, and a few of my friends, I never got to see Eddie live. And it's funny that we were talking about Bayley earlier because I love the Chronicle on the network where they talk about how Bayley was at the Cow Palace.
Oh my God,
Eddie won the title. I mean, and the funny thing is, I was actually thinking about Eddie today, and I'll tell you why. Because I saw that Shaw Guerrero is working at AEW right now.
That's right, yeah.
As well as Vicky, and I think Shaw is a really good announcer for the wrestlers coming out. Excuse me, and it made me think that, of course, she is, because she has a mother and a father who were both great vocalists in wrestling. Of course, Vicky Guerrero, no more said. Like, she's one of the greatest heels of all time. Fight me if you disagree. And Eddie, apart from, this is the thing. When we talk about Eddie Guerrero's legacy, we often point to the fact that he was this excellent wrestler, which of course he was throughout his entire career. But I don't know if we always give enough credit to the fact that he was good in the mic. He could be evil and despicable. He could be hilarious and lovable, and he could probably switch that on the turn of a dime. And it's nice that we're talking about him a couple of weeks removed from me talking about how much I loved Halloween Havoc '97 and that match was great. What about you for Eddie?
Eddie, I loved Eddie when I was younger, and it's such a shame because we think about Eddie Guerrero and immediately we think about, we lost him too soon, where we should be remembering how great he was. And yes, he was great in terms of all-round performer, in the ring, out the ring, on the mic, personality, all that stuff. But we always need to remember around that time where he was blossoming in all those departments, he was the shortest guy on the roster, bar Rey Mysterio. You know, he was about 5'6", 5'7", maybe maybe a bit taller than that. But you know what I mean? Like, he was definitely not the tallest guy. And the fact that this, shorter guy beat Brock Lesnar at the pay-per-view before WrestleMania 20 to go into WrestleMania 20, the biggest WrestleMania of all time up to that point, as WWE champion, shows how great of a performer he was, because that didn't happen,
Yeah.
I loved the unbelievable amount of theme songs he had. It seemed like for a period of time, he had about a new theme song every single week. My favourite one being this.
Ah.
That was my favourite one.
Yeah, that's like the evil Eddie theme, isn't it?
Yeah. So when I've kind of talked about this before, but when I did that kind of like watch through of all the stuff when the network first came out in 2014, and I started at like 2001, I watched through all the Raws and stuff like that. I've started again recently. I went back to 97. Now I'm on 99, but never. I mean, but at that point, I got to 2005 for that original watch through. After years of doing the watch through, and seeing his heel stuff, like despicable evil Eddie with Ray. Talking about how he has this secret and doesn't want to reveal this secret about Dominic. He's so unbelievably entertaining and so amazing. And some of the stuff he's saying, like some of the lines that he had written for him, I suppose, for the promos, are so absurd. But he makes them work so well. He's just so great. And I'd argue that he's one of the greatest heels of all time because of that work and the stuff in WCW and that sort of thing, where he was rude, bad Uncle Eddie who tried to get his nephew Chavo to shave his head and all that stuff, and just wanted Ray's mask and all this stuff. Just a despicable guy. Yeah. But then it's so funny because the best heels are usually the nicest humans, and you will not find a bad Eddie Guerrero story, so that's why I think he's the greatest or one of the greatest ever.
I'm thinking of, like, you would hear about it's on a documentary somewhere. I think Vicky tells a story that they were walking out of a restaurant one day or something, and he saw a homeless guy and he just took his shoes off and gave them to this guy.
What's that about? You know what I mean? Who does that?
Yeah, a good soul like him, man. Yeah. I'll throw in one very quick thing about Eddie is that I think it was on WWF SmackDown 2 Know Your Role, or maybe Just Bring It on the PS2. It was one of those video games where you could where Eddie and China were in the game. So I think it was Know Your Role. And if you team them up, they would do the Mamacita entrance where, like, he would give her the flowers, right? And she would be like, "Oh, flowers, thank you," right? I used to love assigning that entrance to Undertaker and Kane.
Yes.
And you can just imagine, like, 10-year-old like going, look at Undertaker giving Kane flowers.
I did that in 2000 and WWE 12 or something, and I gave Undertaker Brodus Clay's entrance, like the Funkasaurus, right? And at first I was howling laughing because look how funny this is, haha. And then by the time you get to the ring, I found myself in silence, just watching it, disturbed. Just like, what have I just done?
You're going, damn, Taker can move.
Damn, Taker. Right, Eddie Guerrero, one of the greatest ever, and when he beats Brock at No Way Out 04 is one of my favourite moments of all time in terms of wrestling. That reaction is so real, so organic. So yeah, good stuff. Right, number 2, next random wrestler to come out the bucket. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
It is. Oh, good one. Billy Kidman.
Right, okay, straight away. I was so pleasantly surprised when, after the fact, I learned, I only learned this at the Paul Heyman show, at the Inside the Ropes Paul Heyman show, that in those 2013 back-to-back nights that WWE did in Glasgow, you were at one and I was at the other, where Paul Heyman was wheeled out and beat him up with the candlestick, that the guy wheeling him out was Billy Kidman. And I didn't realize that because he's aged, he's older now. So I didn't clock that was Billy Kidman. I knew that he worked for WWE, but I'd never seen him wrestle, and I was always gutted that I'd never seen him in the flesh, never seen him live. And then 3 years later, at that Inside the Ropes show, when Heyman said that was Billy Kidman, there was easily about 25 people in the audience that went, "Oh, I've seen Billy Kidman live." I love Billy Kidman, and I absolutely, I hope you got it queued up, Chris. I flipping.
Oh, hang on. Yes, okay, I'll do it.
Get it queued up. Because I was about to sing it there.
Yeah, hang on, Billy Kidman. Right, go for it.
Hey.
Yeah. It doesn't even say it. Yeah.
Man,
The first comment is a heel Apollo Crews with this theme would be glorious.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Tell you what, man. Like, say this about Billy Kidman. Having recently watched through all the Invasion stuff a few months ago with the kind of watch along that I'm doing right now, he was like protected. They clearly had high hopes for him. And then you think through the rest of Ruthless Aggression, he was a mainstay in the cruiserweight division for quite a while. And they did a lot of different things with him. And I felt like we could have seen more from him. I wish he was given more opportunities. I don't think anything that he didn't accomplish was down to him. He had a successful career, and he continues to be successful. As in the kind of backstage capacity. I don't know if he's still working behind the scenes with the WWE now, but case in point, when you said the name Billy Kidman there, I smiled. And when I think of Billy Kidman, I smile. And I think of his matches and that character. I don't know what it is about him. I don't know if it's the shooting star press or the name or just the way that he wrestled. But man, I just have like nothing bad to say about Billy Kidman. What about you?
The king of velocity, Billy Kidman.
Yeah.
He married Tori Wilson, so yeah. I think there was a period of time in 2002, 2003 sort of time where, like, for a brief couple of months, Billy Kidman was one of my favourite wrestlers. Yeah. I thought he was really cool, as that youngster, and I loved the stuff with the Invasion, the stuff how they kept him, as you said, that he kept him really strong. He's one of those WCW guys that wasn't a main eventer, but was still protected, but like RVD, but then went on to be a main eventer. And I had a WCW VHS when I was younger. It was Sold Out 2000. I had it on video. From the Warner Media collection that used to be on sale in Toys R Us. And I remember I actually bought 2 VHSs in there from Toys R Us. It was the Best of 1990s compilation hosted by Tony Schiavone and Ric Flair. And I remember they're talking about how like WCW is going to go into the future and just be the number one wrestling promotion. And it's like, that came out in 2000. Like, oh my God.
Yeah.
What a change, and then I also bought a pink VHS, which was the best of Starrcade and the best of Slamboree, I think. It might be Spring Stampede, one of the two. But it was like these compilation Blu-rays. But anyway, that added to my VHS collection. But I had this one of Sold Out 2000. And on that show, Billy Kidman wrestles 3 matches. He wrestles Dean Malenko in a catch as catch can match. He wrestles... Who else does he wrestle? Perry Saturn in a bunkhouse brawl. This is all from the top of my head, so I could be getting this wrong. I've got nothing in front of me that proves this. I'm just doing from my memory. And then in the third match of the night, he wrestles a guy called The Wall. And it is in this Cage of Terror match or something. And it's just a Hell in a Cell. I just built a Hell in a Cell just without calling it the Hell in a Cell.
I had no idea about this.
This is in 2000, yeah. So obviously they saw the Hell in a Cell and just went, okay, it's called like... Oh no, it was called the Caged Heat. It was a Caged Heat match. Because they couldn't have Hell in a Cell. Yeah, and it's Billy Kidman versus The Wall, and Kidman wrestles 3 matches in one show. So it's like, because I had that like early kid memory of Kidman, then I always kind of liked him. But yeah, I love Billy Kidman. Good shout. And last one for this episode, last random wrestler to recollect about. It is... Oh my God, how did these things happen? It's Raven!
Your boy. I think you should go first on this one, mate.
What about me? Hang on a minute, I need to cue it back up again. God, that was so funny how that happened. What about me? I loved Raven. Again, I went through a wee period of time there where Raven was one of my favourite wrestlers. And he is my boy. He's in my boys' stable. Up there with Maven.
Maven and Raven. I'm just think of that episode of SmackDown in 2002 where Maven wrestled Raven just before the brand split came into effect.
I've got surely to God Maven will be in this tub at some point. He's obscure enough. Because I was such a big fan of the Hardcore title when I was really young. Raven in 2001 was the man. The way like 2000 it was Crash Holly. In 2001 it was Raven.
Yeah.
And he has this match at Backlash 01 against Rhino. And it is one of the best hardcore matches you'll ever see. Just because it's like they've done... What else could they do in terms of a hardcore match, And then they go and do this excellent match where they bring the shopping trolley into the ring and use that itself as a weapon. I don't know. I just loved Raven. And then when he left WWE and went to TNA, he was immediately one of the main eventers in TNA, and I loved his TNA theme song. It was actually one of my original theme songs from my backyard wrestling character. I used to come out to Raven's TNA song. It was just so devious and dark and stuff. And then he just became a top star in TNA. And he never went back to WWE. He never went back as, that kind of darker character. But he did say on Jericho's podcast that in 2002, when he was on Heat every week, just like Kidman was on Velocity, Raven was on Heat every week. Raven was apparently, the book, not necessarily the booker, but one of the heads of creative of Heat in 2002.
Ah.
And because he's such a smart guy, and you can tell that actually just by the way he speaks and stuff, you can tell he's really intelligent.
Yeah.
And he apparently pitched this idea where, he had like Raven's flock in WCW.
Yeah.
He was going to do this new thing. It was like the 7 Deadly Sins. And it was going to be a Heat-only, Heat-exclusive storyline. And it would never be on Raw or anything. It would be like a reason for people to want to watch Heat. And it was him, and he had all these guys, and he was going to try and get like Stevie Richards and these people who weren't being booked very well to be members of the 7 Deadly Sin group. And it was only going to be on Heat. And it never happened because Vince didn't want to put all that time and money into Heat, the show, because it had lost its kind of steam by 2002. Which is a shame, really, because he went on to about 2008. But yeah, so there you go. So in terms of Raven, that's what I think about the King of the Hardcore title in 2001. Loving all of his theme songs, and it could have been so much more. Yeah,
it's a good show. It's funny because before we started this podcast, whenever I would think of Raven, I would think about how much I liked his presentation in ECW, and I'd never thought much of his WWF run. But then hearing you talk about it and kind of living by the philosophy of our podcast of looking at things in the positive sense and seeing the merit and everything, I realized that there was a lot of cool stuff about his WWF run. I loved his feud with Perry Saturn. I thought that was awesome. And obviously, who doesn't love, some people say it's a shambles, but who doesn't love the triple threat match at WrestleMania 17? Like
a shambles? Are you joking?
Going through that glass window is one of the most memorable moments of that pay-per-view. And if you have a memorable moment on what is considered the best wrestling pay-per-view of all time, then you are a success. And it's funny, like you mentioned his TNA run, right? So I wasn't watching TNA this time. I was reading about it all the time in Power Slam though, so I was totally aware of what he was doing at the time. And one thing that I read in Power Slam is that in the the mid noughties, so like because he left WWF or WWE in 2003, 2002, right?
03, yeah.
Somebody sent in a question, and I used to love the Q&A section in Power Slam where fans would just send in letters and questions, and it would be Finn Martin invariably who would write the responses because he was the editor. And somebody asked, like, who's the highest paid wrestler on the independent scene? And for about 2 or 3 years, it was Raven. Even though at that point, even at the time when, like for example, when the Dudleys were initially left the WWE after One Night Stand, before they went to TNA, like, even though there was arguably bigger stars on the independent scene, Raven was so consistent on the indie scene that he commanded the biggest paycheck, and he was still a big name. And it's funny because he was supposed to come over here and do like a spoken word interview kind of show
that'd be great.
At ABC. Like, it was advertised and ticketed, and this was about 2 or 3 years ago, and it got cancelled, and I don't know why, but I think it was supposed to be a classic round. It wasn't like an Inside the Ropes or anything like that. It was like his own people doing it.
Right.
I would love to go see it because, like, to your point, he comes across as this really intelligent, articulate guy. I'd love to hear him speak. I would. Did
you ever go to one of the TNA shows that came to Glasgow in like the mid 2000s? Not necessarily the tapings, but just the house shows.
Nah, I always wanted to. Those mid 2000s ones were at a time where I would have to have begged to go.
Right. Aye.
And so I had to pay my cards right at that point in my life because, I could beg to go to a TNA show or I could beg to go to a WWE show. So I would always pick WWE. So I only ever did go to one TNA show, and that was like Maximum Impact with Jamie in like 2013.
With Austin Aries and that.
Yeah, which was an awesome show. But yeah, I would love to have seen him kind of in the more quintessentially classic six-sided ring TNA prime kind of era,
Those mid 2000 shows that they used to do were just so good. I think it's just because it was different from WWE, and it felt more. You felt you were more part of it because JB would come out and be the MC and get the crowd involved and stuff. He was so good. But Mick Foley came out at the 2008 one because he just signed with TNA, and Mick Foley came out in the Glasgow show, and he cut a promo and he said he wants to thank all of the famous Scots in the wrestling business that have meant a lot to him because he was in Scotland. Yeah. And he went, I'd like to thank Scott Levy, better known as Raven. And it was the first time I knew what his name was. And I went, oh, Raven's called Scott Levy? Like, his name is Scott? I just didn't expect Raven to have such a simple name,
It's I only learned his name was Scott Levy on the Rise and Fall of VCW DVD, where they showed the clip of him apologizing for the whole
Oh
crucifixion
yeah, or
thing.
maybe I did know
He
then. Oh
calls
yeah,
himself Scott Levy and that.
maybe I did know then. I guess I'd watched that one before. But anyway, that's the first time I went, oh, really? That's Raven. So yeah, there you go. Oh well, there you go. There's
What a good name to conclude on.
Right, I know. I'd love to see him do some more stuff in wrestling with it. I don't know why he's never like started his own promotion or gotten a job behind the scenes or something. He seems to be extremely passionate, and Inside the Rope should totally do a smaller show with him. They could easily fill the Classic Grand or something, you know.
Like, Chris, could you at some point just clip 2 seconds of me just saying Inside the Ropes, please try and bring Raven over, because that's the kind of smaller kind of show that I would love to go and see. And don't you just think though that whether it would be like NXT or AEW or Impact, like, he could add so much value. And in terms of just for character, like not even like he's a great wrestler, obviously, but just in terms of presentation and character and owning your character, he just seems like, because he was so good at that, like he would be a natural fit to mentor these younger aspiring wrestlers.
Do you remember back in kind of like late February, early March of this year when they were talking about revealing the Exalted One? And everyone was talking about how it was going to be Matt Hardy. Like everyone knew it was going to be broken. Matt Hardy was going to be the Exalted One of the Dark Order. And then it turned out to be Brody Lee and stuff. There was an episode of Dynamite maybe 2 or 3 weeks before the pandemic hit, before the big review thing. And like there was this bump with the Dark Order over the barricade, and Raven was sitting in the front row. And they showed Raven, and everyone was like, is that Raven? So I was like, oh, Raven's going to be the Exalted One. Raven's going to be the manager of the Dark Order, and it's going to be amazing.
That's right.
And they never talked about it. They never even mentioned it again.
I remember that now. That gone out of my mind, but I remember thinking, God, this is like when Sting started showing up before Starrcade '97. Like they're slowly teasing, like this could be him. He's just there, you know, and they could make him really dark and mysterious, and you know, he's old now, older, but like he's this kind of. I think he'd be amazing, like something like that. And a lot of people aren't kind of hot on Dark Order. I like Brody Lee since he won the TNT Championship, but
it's coming into their own. I think it's taking some time. It's getting there, you know.
Yeah.
And who made that point? Was it? It was Matt Hardy. Matt Hardy did a interview on YouTube with Chris Van Vliet. You know that guy does interviews on YouTube.
Yeah. He also does cameos, by the way, just from.
We should go. We get him. He did an interview this week with Matt Hardy, and Matt Hardy said if the Dark Order was happening in WWE right now, and it had gone the way it had gone, and the fans were so sour on it, there is absolutely no way they would have stuck with it. They would have given up on that after 4 weeks. You know what I mean? Because it just wasn't working. But AEW have stuck with it for all this time, and it's taken far longer than expected. Like the Dark Order debuted on like the 3rd episode of Dynamite or something, like back in October, and we're still trying to get to it's nearly a year in, and we're still like really the Dark Order. But it's come on leaps and bounds with Brody Lee being involved and Anna Jay and all these great additions, and the Colt Cabana stuff. How like Brody Lee wants Cabana to be in the Dark Order, but he doesn't want to see what he's doing. Like it's kind of behind the scenes sort of thing. It's coming on, and it will get there, and it will be a big thing eventually. But they're just like trying to take their time with it, I guess. And for some reason, they believe in it so strongly, and they've not given up on it. And I kind of like that, you know.
You know, I'd like to, like I say, to go back to what we were saying. I'd like to think that there's something left for Raven to do. I don't want Raven's time with mainstream wrestling to be done. So whether it's maybe bringing him in and doing something with the Dark Order, like we're talking about, or I'd like it to be AEW or like an NXT thing. That's where I'd like him to do something. I just want something creatively with Raven involved. One more thing before he hangs up. Yeah, Impact would be good. Yeah. Especially when Impact starts having live fans again. And here's the thing, do you know, we've talked about this a lot, right? But I can't wait till this flipping pandemic is over and wrestling can happen. I'd love Impact to tour the UK, because how cool would that be for you and I to go to a show and then do a podcast about it? Like, and we're going to make an effort to do more of that kind of stuff now. Like,
totally.
When hopefully the world kind of picks back up again.
Now that we're both grown ups and have jobs and can afford tickets.
Well, yeah, but one of us is a grown up who also just bought a house. But you know, we'll be selective.
We'll work through it. We'll
work it. Yeah,
we'll have to beg for it, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
We'll be like, Kate, please. Right. Right, ladies and gents, there we are. There we are. Had a bit of a moment there. There we are. Another episode that's in the books, in the pocket, and out of sight. And it has been episode 23. We are now officially all grown up. And next week, what was the tagline for WrestleMania 24? It was like the Mayweather Big Show thing, wasn't it? It was like the greatest fight in the world, the biggest versus the best. That was it. The biggest versus the best. So one of us is the biggest, and one of us is the best.
Well, you're taller than me.
I'll let y'all decide. Thanks for watching, or thanks for listening, everybody, to another episode of The Wrestling Connection. Please follow us on social media, Twitter and Instagram. Twitter is at WrestleConnect1. Instagram is at WrestleConnection. And please subscribe on YouTube just by searching the Wrestling Connection podcast into your YouTube search engine. Hit the subscribe button, and you'll be all caught up to date with everything involved with us, as well as subscribing on your podcasting outlet. Please leave us a review, feedback, anything you've got for us. We will take it on board. We'll read it, and we will admire you for being brave enough to do so. Thanks a lot. Take care of yourselves, everybody, and we'll speak to you all next week.
Run if you want to.